I'd like to welcome everyone to the ISU course for speed skating referees, 2018 in Rome, October 4th through 7th. I'm Dan Immerfall. I'm one of the co-moderators of the course. The other co-moderators are Daniel Kabelduk and Ivan Diakov. And we are going to begin with a summary of the rule changes, ISU rule changes that were adopted at the 2018 Congress. And we're going to begin with the general regulations. You know, we usually don't deal a lot with the general regulations, but there are a few good nuggets in there of information that you may not use every day, but that you need to be aware of. And the first one is Rule 102, paragraph 2, definition of ineligible person. And a person becomes ineligible to participate in ISU activities and competitions by skating or officiating in an international competition not sanctioned by the ISU, in any of the ISU sport disciplines, or otherwise violating this Rule 102. If an eligibility is imposed by the Council according to this Rule 102, paragraph 7 below. And paragraph 7 deals with the consequences. And as an official, the Council will issue a warning in case of a minor violation, which includes participation in a non-sanctioned event which would otherwise have been sanctioned. 2, impose a period of ineligibility for up to 1 year for a first-time participation at a non-sanctioned event where clearly the event would not have been sanctioned. 3, impose a period of ineligibility for up to 2 years for any further participation at a non-sanctioned event which would have otherwise been sanctioned. 4, impose a period of ineligibility for up to 2 years for a second-time participation at a non-sanctioned event where clearly the event would not have been sanctioned. And 5, impose a period of ineligibility for up to 15 years for any further participation at a non-sanctioned event where clearly the event would not have been sanctioned. So that's an awful lot of words. As a native speaker, it took me a little while to sift through it to figure out what it really means, but I think the takeaway from this is be careful with the competitions that you are asked to referee in and that you actually referee in, and make sure that they are either sanctioned by the ISU or by your national federation. And that will become a little bit clearer a little later on in this presentation. So let's take a look at Rule 102, paragraph 6, trademarks. That's excluding manufacturer trademarks. So this is the advertising logos that can be on the equipment. It's important to note that competition speed skating skin suit is considered as consisting of 2 pieces, 1 piece upper body, including the cap, and 1 piece lower body. So total, you can have 650 square centimeters of advertising. That's broken down on the cap to maximum size per marking, 30 square centimeters. Above the waist, including the arms, 45 square centimeters for a maximum of 6 markings, and the lower body below the waist, 250 square centimeter maximum, maximum 2 markings. The manufacturer trademarks, for the boots, you can have 2 markings, 1 on each boot of 20 square centimeters. The blades, the same. The connecting structures, 6 square centimeters each, 1 on each construction. And the competition skin suit, total upper and lower body, 60 square centimeters, 30 square centimeters on the top and 30 on the bottom. Oops. There we go. So I guess the question with these last 2 slides is who is responsible for monitoring this and enforcing this. Is it the referees, or is it the ISU representative or the technical committee representative at the competition? And I guess I will defer to Mr. Cabalco for the answer to that question.
Actually, according to the rules and the practices, that's commercial part of the competitions. And everything what goes to commercial part belongs to ISU representatives. In case of the championship, that's ISU council representative and TC representative. In case of World Cups, probably purely a TC representative. So normally we take care, we measure all those kind of markings, advertisement markings and trademarks.
Okay, thanks. Because I know as a referee, I've got way more, or a lot of other important things to do than to be looking at logos. So just so you're aware of it, but not really our responsibility. Rule 108, paragraph 2, age limits for speed skating. International competitions, the age before July 1 preceding the competition for Junior A is now 17 and 18. The old rule said it was 17 through 19. So just be aware of that. Rule 115, entries. Paragraph 5, post entries. The post entry deadline is now standardized all across the board. Any entry received after 8 p.m. local time at the competition site on the closing date for entries is a post entry and shall not be accepted. So that's pretty clear, cut and dried. You know, too bad. Rule 121, officials. Paragraph 1, officials categories. In the Youth Olympic Winter Games is now recognized as an ISU event, and the referees and starters must be ISU officials. Rule 123, protest and ex officio correction of results. Paragraph 1, right to file protests. The protest fee of 100 Swiss francs is now refunded if the protest is successful. I remember back in the day when all the rules said was that in order to file protest you had to pay 100 Swiss francs, and it didn't say who it went to, what happened to it. So whenever a protest was filed, the referees were all pretty happy because that meant we got to use that at our own discretion. But you know, now if it's successful, it goes back. So there's actually some incentive for the team leaders to file a protest that they think has some merit. Paragraph 2, persons entitled to file a protest. Coaches are now permitted to file a protest, but only with the approval of the skater or team leader. And that makes sense. The coach is the person working with the skaters. They know what happened on the ice. In most cases, they're the ones that have the best command of the English language, so that only makes sense. Paragraph 4, protest restrictions. Field of play decisions are not subject to correction and or review. So just stop and think about that for a minute. Next point, the time or score of a skater is final once the decision of the competent official is announced by the official announcer and or displayed on the scoreboard. That's another one you need to stop and think about a little bit, because that begs the question, what is the effect of Rule 249, which states that the times are official once the referee signs the timekeeping protocol? Anybody have any comments about that? I think we're going to deal with that in group work, aren't we? Okay, all right. So keep that in the back of your mind, and that's going to be coming later. Rule 126, Olympic Winter Games, paragraph 9, officials appointed by ISU president. Sport entries expert has been added. So that's going to be one of the appointed officials along with the referees and the starters. I guess what does that mean for us, and what will the main function of that person be? And Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we discussed briefly yesterday what the function of the sport expert is. It purely take care, as Melanie said, it's a paper version used to be, but we hope in the future it will be electronic way of entries that team leaders must confirm 3 days before initial event the entries of the competitors. So the sport entries expert will take care only about entries and connection with team leaders and technical delegates and with timekeeping and referees as well, of course. Yeah. So this now officially function because that's needed also for organizing committees. Yeah, we deal it on somehow sideways, but now it's official, stated in the rules that the sport expert very important judge or referee or official during Olympics.
Okay, thanks. And I see that as taking some of the work off of us and some of the pressure off of us, because previously we've been responsible for approving all the entries and making sure that everyone is eligible. So this is something we can offload to the sport expert. They go through all of that, give us the list, and we can be assured that it's all correct and we just sign off on it. So it's a nice rule to make our lives a little easier. Rule 134, paragraph 3, award of medals. At ISU Championships, medals are now presented in the order 3rd place, 2nd place, 1st place. Again, just something for you to be aware of. Once in a while we get asked to present medals, and you want to make sure you're going to the right place in the podium. Daniel, why don't you run that down there?
Just to be sure, for Junior World Cups and World Cups, it's 1, 2, 3? Yeah? Okay.
No, same. 3, 2, 1. By championships. Okay, so only for championships and not for World Cup. No, World Cup 2. Yes, all 3, 2, 1. Championships, World Cups, Junior World Cup. Okay. Okay, now we can get into the special regulations and technical rules for speed skating. And we're going to begin with the special regulations for speed skating, which is the first section of our green rule book. And Rule 200, distances and team competitions. And one, international competitions may include competitions as follows. Distances 100, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 3,000, 5,000, and 10,000 meters. Races can include mass start, team pursuit, team sprint. You can also have all-around or sprint combination with several distances with one prize, 500,000, 500,000, or a sprint competition, 500, 1,500, 1,000, 3,000, or a junior ladies all-around competition, 500, 1,500, 1,000, 5,000, junior men all-around. 500, 3,000, 1,500, 5,000, which is ladies all-around program, or back when I was a skater, that was called small all-around. 500, 5,000, 1,500, and 10,000 meters, which is the men's all-around competition. So as what happened here was a wordy first paragraph was replaced by this easier to use chart, so to speak, so it's easy to refer to, what distances can be skated and what order. Rule 200, distances and team competitions. Team competitions may be held as mixed gender relay races at international competitions. This is already something that's happening in short track, and you know, this is where we're gonna test it out and see if it's viable for us. Novelty formats may also be used. Any new methods that modify the special regulations and technical rules must comply with Rule 104, paragraph 11B. So, back to the general regulations. Rule 104, paragraph 11, compliance with rules and novelty formats at international competitions. And paragraph B says, modifications of a technical nature and new methods or systems with respect to the special regulations and technical rules, hereafter referred to as novelty format, may be implemented or approved by the Council in consultation with the concerned technical committee on a trial basis in international competitions or open international competitions, but not in ISU championships. So I guess I have the question, what exactly is a novelty format? And Alex, can you explain that a little bit? What a novelty format is and what that means to us?
Yeah, novelty format is actually this new rules, and we have after famous EU case when two Dutch skaters filed a complaint against ISU that we or ISU did not allow to compete in competitions not sanctioned by ISU. So that was 250 meters ice track where both speed skaters and short trackers could take part. And there was a big negotiation or big deal between that company, that was a commercial company who tried to organize such a competition. So in this case, it's now stated novelty format. So if somebody will come with a new format completely, it can be allowed by council. Yeah, approved by council in consultation with respective technical committees.
Okay, great. Thanks.
That's a novelty
Format. Thanks for that clarification. Rule, of course, now that also begs the question, what is an open international competition? And Rule 107, paragraph 14 deals with that. And it says an open international competition is a competition organized by a third party and or co-organized by a third party and an ISU member, and or a competition which is in which eligible and ineligible persons compete together, and or a competition containing any novelty format. And the event must be sanctioned by ISU, and the council must approve any novelty format to exempt them from otherwise applicable ISU rules. So in other words, if we're skating on this 250-meter track, as Alex described, there's going to be things that take place and a format that isn't going to follow our normal set rules. So the council needs to give it its blessing in order for it to be sanctioned, and for you as referees not to get into any trouble by officiating or refereeing at a non-sanctioned event. Rule 107, paragraph 15, inter-club competitions. This is something I think goes hand in hand with the open international competitions. This is organized by a club affiliated with an ISU member, but not the member itself. So in other words, if the Stockholm Speed Skating Club wants to organize a competition, they're allowed to do that. Skaters from the organizing club compete against skaters from at least one other club of one other ISU member. And they are subject to ISU rules. And they may include skaters who cannot compete in international competitions such as masters, adults, cubs, chicks, etc. Well, okay, so yeah. I'm a North American. We don't have cubs and chicks. I guess what are cubs and chicks? Does anybody have an answer to that? Alex? Daniel, why don't you, nope, it's over here, sorry. Why don't you run that back there, and our Norwegian friend can perhaps enlighten us.
I think cubs and chicks are a classification within figure skating.
Okay, all right. So nothing that we need to worry about then. Okay, okay, perfect. That's why nobody knows. Okay, and the organizing club must also make sure that the competition is not mistaken for an ISU event or international competition. So their announcement needs to clearly state that. Rule 107, paragraph 18, ISU sanctioned events. You know, if we're talking about non-sanctioned events, and you know, we need to know what a sanctioned event is. And only events published by the ISU are sanctioned events. So we get that communication out once a year that has lists all the international competitions. And if the ISU rejects an application for sanction, it will inform the skating community. Back to our speed skating rules. Rule 201, paragraph 1, World Championships. Beginning with the 2020-21 season, there will be only one World Championships that is organized annually. It will include single distances, all-around combination, and a sprint combination. The distances that are skated in each one of these will remain the same as we're used to, and the format will be decided by the council. The order of the races and competitions for each day will be decided by the ISU in consultation with the organizer and or technical committee. Rule 201, paragraph 2, European Championships. If you look in the rule book, there's a lot of things underlined. But the event remains largely unchanged. There's just a lot of new wording in there. It will still be organized annually with alternating programs. The individual distances will remain the same. Team pursuit and team sprint under the 2016 rule is broadened to team races. And the order of races and competitions for each day are now decided by the ISU in consultation with the organizer and technical committee. There used to be a specified program in the rules that needed to be followed. Now it's up to organizers and the ISU. Rule 201, paragraph 3, Four Continents Championships. So new championships beginning next season, 2019-2020. It's organized annually. The format of the championships will be decided by the council, so we don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. The order of races and competitions for each day will be decided by the ISU in consultation with the organizer and the technical committee. Essentially, this is the equivalent of the European Championships, and it's open to everyone except Europeans. And you don't see it in Rule 201, paragraph 3, but Rule 130, paragraph 3 states that it is only open to non-Europeans. Rule 201, paragraph 4, World Junior Championships. Rule is essentially unchanged. The wording has been changed to make it easier to understand. The prescribed competition program has been removed. The ISU, in consultation with the organizers and technical committee, will decide the order of the races and the competitions for each day. Quartet start requirement is no longer mentioned in this rule, but it's still mentioned in Rule 243. Rules 107 and 201, sort of rationale for changes to the championships, especially referring to the One World Championships that we're now going to have instead of all of the separate ones. It gives more value to the World Championship title, more attention to only one World Championships a year, more focus from partners and fans, more contributions to World Championships and other World Cup organizers, more travel money contribution to ISU members. It's a savings for teams and the ISU. It makes the calendar more flexible, less World Championships to fit in. and the World Cup will have more value. They'll also increase the prize money awarded. So those are all the positive things that were considered when this format change was made. Alex, do you have anything that you want to add to that, or okay? All right. And Rule 133 titles. The titles at the winner of ISU Championships Bears has been modified to reflect the new World Championship format and the addition of the 4 Continental Championships. And if you want to know the exact wording, you can look at the rule itself. But you know, for our purposes, that's not really important. But you do need to be aware of that change. Rule 203, back in our special regulations, standard tracks. Paragraph 1 now states specifically where a standard speed skating track can be laid out, and that can be in an open-air ice rink, a covered ice rink, or an enclosed ice rink. Rule 208, entries for ISU championships and ISU events. A lot is underlined in the rule book, but the rule remains mostly the same. The order has been changed, the paragraphs to reflect the new World Championship concept. Paragraph 1.1 is the old paragraph 8. Paragraph 1.2 is the old paragraph 2. Team sprint is added for World Championships single distances. That's paragraph 2.1.1. And for single distance championships, the number of skaters that will qualify by SQRL time ranking is specifically listed. And the SQRL reserve positions are specifically limited to 6. Before that was just listed in a communication. Rule 208, entries for ISU championships and ISU events. The number of substitutes that can be entered for the sprint and all-around competitions is specifically listed as 1 per gender. And you know, as a referee, you show up at these things and you know, there's always somebody that lists 2 or 3 substitutes, and then they try and play a game, and you know, now it's clearly stated in the rule, only 1. The 4 Continental Championships is added. Maximum number of skaters from one country is the same as the maximum number of skaters from one country is the same as the same competition in World Championships. So if you get you know, 3 in World Sprint Championships, you get 3 in the sprint portion of the 4 Continental Championships. Only 1 substitute per competition, and detailed regulations and qualifying quota places and entry quotas will be issued in an annual communication. Rule 208, entries for ISU championships and ISU events. Entries for the World Junior Championships remain the same, but now an entry chart has been added to make it easier to figure out. We used to have a fairly wordy paragraph. Now you just look here and it's all pretty clear. So I don't think I need to go into any further explanation of that. Rule 214, appointment of referees, starters, and other officials for ISU championships. And paragraph 2, the sentence giving consideration to the request of organizers has been eliminated. So to me that means that the appointment process is now the sole responsibility of the ISU Council. Rule 217, duties and powers of the starter. This looks like a substantial change with a new paragraph 2 and 3. However, the old rule was just renumbered, and nothing has changed there. Rule 221, world records. Paragraph 2, conditions to be observed. Some paragraphs have been renumbered here. There's a lot of stuff underlined. The important takeaway from this is doping control requirement has been strengthened. For team events, a minimum of 2 skaters per team must have been selected for doping control on the day of the race and tested negative. If the existing world record is broken more than once on the same day in competitions at the same venue, the top 2 skaters or teams achieving a world record must have been selected for doping control on the day of the race. So unless anyone has any questions, we can get into the technical rules for speed skating. Rule 239, drawing procedure. Paragraph 2, drawing at ISU championships and other ISU events. Paragraph 2.2c regarding the drawing composition of pairs for days 2 and beyond have been modified. It now takes place under the supervision of the technical committee representative instead of the ISU representative, which just makes more practical sense because there's always a representative from the technical committee there. Additional rules referenced in paragraph 2.3b and c have been changed to reflect the renumbering of those rules. So, you know, a lot of stuff underlined, but nothing really changes. Rule 240, drawing at World Championships. The rules for the draw do not change. The headings of the paragraphs have been changed to reflect the new World Championships format. Old Rule 242, which is the World Sprint Championships, is now included in this rule in paragraph 4. The new Rule 242 is for the European and Four Continents Championships. And the wording remains the same as the old Rule 240, paragraph 4. So nothing really new to know here. You just need to know where to look for things now, different places. Rule 241, drawing at Olympic Winter Games. Paragraph 4C, which is team pursuit, has been reworded to state specifically what happens to the 4 slowest teams from the quarterfinals. That was never really clear before. So the 4th and 5th fastest teams advance to the C final, and the 7th and 8th fastest teams advance to the D final. Rule 241, drawing at Olympic Winter Games, paragraph 5A, the first bullet point, which is mass start composition of semifinals, has been modified. The best ranked skater is placed in semifinal 1. The 2nd and 3rd ranked skaters are placed in semifinal 2. 4th and 5th ranked skaters are placed in semifinal 1, etc. And this is the procedure we've been using in World Cup. Rule 243, drawing at World Junior Championships. The maximum number of skaters in mass start has been increased from 28 to 30 skaters. You can find that in paragraph 4.A. Rule 244, drawing at international competitions. Broad latitude is now given to the organizers. The composition of the start list is at the discretion of the organizing committee and based on the level of entered skaters. And the pairs can be arranged based on the ranking of the skaters, which can be based on qualifying times, personal best, or other seeding rankings. The lowest ranked skater starts in the first pair. Skaters can be divided into groups of 4, 6, or 8 for a draw. Skaters can be divided into 2 or 3 groups for a draw, or any combination of any of above. So again, broad latitude. You can essentially go in and do whatever. So we'll see how it works out. It certainly makes our life a little bit easier. Rule 245, withdrawal from the start after the draw, entry of substitutes. Okay, this rule here has been substantially changed and has been simplified. I think we're all going to be quite happy with how this works. So withdrawals without a substitute. All skaters who were drawn in the same lane in earlier pairs are moved toward the vacant place, keeping their initial lane. Two or more skaters who are left to skate alone due to the rearrangement should be paired together. The skater from the earlier pair is placed in the vacant spot in the later pair. I guess the question here is, how should we handle two skaters left to skate alone who are starting in the same lane in the second 500 or 1,000 meter of a sprint championships? Yes, does anybody have any thoughts on that and what we should do with that? And is there any other precedent in the rules that gives us some guidance on that? Barry, you're shaking your head. Do you have something that you'd like to say? Yeah.
I'm not for sure, but I thought in the international rules there is something about that you can place the two together in the so you give the other one another lane, but it's not for the second race. That's not allowed because they have always have the inner lane start and the outer lane start.
Right. So is what you're saying is that in the second 500 or 1,000 in a four-distance sprint championships, there may be one or two single pairs because we have to follow that rule. Yeah, and that's the way I interpret it as well.
Yeah, but the first distance you can place them together.
Right. Okay. That I agree with. Okay. Withdrawals with the substitute. After the rearrangement described above is completed, the substitute is placed in the vacant position. So that is going to mean that any substitute is going to be probably placed in pair number 1. So I guess to state this in a little bit different way, pairs are simply rearranged. It doesn't matter how they were initially decided, whether it was an open draw, drawn groups, or composed by rank. Skaters keep their lanes in most cases. They are simply moved down to fill vacant, to fill any vacancies. Substitutes are not dealt with until after all initially entered skaters are rearranged in pairs. The substitute then goes in whatever vacant place is left. That could be pair 1 skating alone. So step 1, move skaters down to fill up pairs. Step 2, combine skaters who are left to skate alone. Step 3, enter any substitute if they are entered. So substitute is the last person that you deal with. Questions about any of that? Is that clear to everyone? Would it be helpful to see an example? Yes? Okay, then let's just pause for a minute. Alex, I think you have something. Why don't you pull that up and then we'll swap. Just take that one.
Doesn't matter. You don't look at the names, but what we do. This is very simple. You have inner lane. You have outer lane. You have full set, 11 pairs. For instance, you have withdrawal from inner lane. You just move all earlier pairs 1 down. So all skaters still keep their lane, but they skate 1 pair later.
Okay, so we have a single skater left in pair number 1 in the outer lane, and they still remain there.
Still remain.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have substitute, he will jump in the first pair in the lane. in this case, even if his rank or seeding time way faster and he belongs, for instance, to the first pair, or for the last pair, sorry, to the strongest group. That doesn't matter. Initial drawing done. We forget about seedings. Yeah. Before we have to keep it always in the mind which group he escaped. Now we forget. Initial draw is done. So, in case you have 2 withdrawals in the same lane, same procedure. Yeah, and then that's it.
Rule 253, racing rules, competitions and distances with special rules, mass start. Okay, Susan. In paragraph B7, the term serious obstruction is replaced with unsportsmanlike behavior. This can lead to disqualification. You know, it begs the question, what does the word can mean in this case? It can lead to disqualification. Anybody have any comment on what can means? Native English speakers? Okay, so what you're saying is that it's optional. It's up to the discretion of the referee. It's kind of like the word may. There's some latitude involved here. I would agree with that. So it's a possibility. The referee now has the authority to disqualify the skater or skaters concerned. Is this any different than the old rule? Stop and think for a minute. As what the old rule says is serious obstruction of other skaters will lead to disqualification. Now it says the referee has the authority to disqualify the skaters concerned for serious obstruction, well, I'm sorry, for unsportsmanlike behavior. So I don't think that changes anything, but it specifically gives the authority to the referee to do this. And an obstructed skater may be advanced to the next round at the sole discretion of the referee. So you always had team leaders asking about their skater, if they got knocked over by another skater, if there's any chance to advance them to the final, and so on and so forth. And there's now we can do that, but there's still a few things that we need to work out as a practical matter, and we deal with that in group work, don't we, Daniel? Yeah. So keep that one in the back of your mind, because it's not as simple as it sounds on paper. Rule 253, racing rules, paragraph 4, competitions and distances with special rules, mass start, continued. In paragraph B9, helmet covers are added as a means to identify skaters. That was never listed in the rule before. It was just in the mass start communication. Paragraph B10, skaters who do not finish the race will be ranked by the number of laps completed. The old rule was may. Now they will be, so it's mandatory. Skaters who quit the race in the same lap are ranked by their last intermediate time. So previously they were just ranked by when they quit the race, whatever lap that was, and they were considered to be tied. Now we're looking at their last intermediate time, and I guess what does last intermediate time mean? Is that their time at the last time they crossed the finish line, or is it their time at the last intermediate sprint? Okay, so is what I'm getting from Alex is it's their time, the last time that they crossed the finish line before they quit the race. So whatever position they were in then, that's how they're ranked. Rule 262, allowance of a fresh start, is added to the list of rules that do not apply. I know I've had a case or two where something happens, the skater gets knocked over and is interfered with, seriously obstructed, and at that point there was no method to advance them, so on or so forth, or if it happened in a final, there was no remedy, and a team leader has come and asked if their skater can have a fresh start, and that was never really clear before. Now it is. Rule 262 is specifically excluded, so no fresh starts, period. Rule 253, racing rules, competitions and distances with special rules. A new paragraph C is added. For one-day competitions, see the special rules in the respective ISU communication. All right, so Alex, what does this mean? Yeah, he doesn't even know. He's thinking about it. Okay, so he's going to think about it. We'll get an answer a little bit later, but for now, this we don't usually run into one-day competitions too much, so we'll see if we can get an answer later. Rule 255, paragraph 3, false start. 3.2, in the case of a false start, the competitor shall be recalled by a second shot and or a whistle from the starter. The new word there is and, so it can be a shot and the whistle. The old rule just said a shot or the whistle, and as you all know, the starters or most of them will shoot the gun and blow the whistle, so this just reflects what our current practice is.
One-day competitions, it talks about marathons. That's one-day competitions.
Okay.
Yeah, so because we don't have anything specified about marathons, but this is special rules, right? Must starts, that's a must start. So there will be special respective ISU communication, and if in the future we will go more in the way of must start marathons, yeah, as a specific competition. That's one-day competition, right? And you don't skate marathons in 2-3 days in a row and so on. You may.
Okay, so right now just for marathon. We don't need to worry about anything else at this point. Rule 256, exceptional situations, paragraph C has been reworded to allow a skater to cross the inner and outer demarcation line of the lane to avoid interference while overtaking, provided the distance is not shortened, which would be cutting the inner line of the curve. And this rule now reflects our interpretation. The old rule said that they could move to the outer lane to make the pass, but sometimes a skater in the inner lane needs to go around on the inside into the inner lane, or maybe into the warm-up lane, or vice versa. So whatever way that the skater making the pass can initiate a clean pass, and they end up crossing the demarcation line of the lane, it's okay as long as they don't cut the inner line of the curve. That is absolute, and that is always a disqualification. And it just reflects what our current interpretation of the rule has been, so nothing really new. Rule 257, responsibility in cases of obstruction. The word collision has been changed to obstruction wherever it appears, or wherever it appeared in the old rule. There no longer needs to be an actual collision for disqualification at the crossing. This makes the rule consistent with the terms hinder and obstructive way, which appear in the text of the rule. So I think it's important to have a good definition of hinder and obstruction. As a native English speaker, I looked it up in the dictionary. In the United States, we use a dictionary called Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary. Those of you who learned English, as a second language, probably learned Oxford English, but I think the definitions are still the same. And the first definition for hinder, according to Webster, is to make slow or difficult the progress of. Definition 2 is to hold back, to delay, to impede, or prevent action. And the synonym, or the similar word, is obstruct. Okay, the definition for obstruct, first definition is to block or close up by an obstacle. Second definition is to hinder from passage, action, or operation, impede. And the synonym is hinder. Okay, so to simplify it, anything that one skater does to the other that prevents them from completing the crossing action is grounds for disqualification. So I don't think that this really changes how we interpret and apply the rule, because most referees have been doing that. Once in a while I'll run into a referee that says, well, there's no problem there because there wasn't any collision, or there was no touching going on. But now keep those definitions of hinder and obstruct in your mind, and it's just anything that prevents the smooth passage or the smooth changing. Rule 261, racing rules for team competitions. Identification of the skaters on team pursuit team, that's paragraph 1F, and team sprint team, which is paragraph 3C, are now clearly stated and are the same for both races. Skater 1 wears white armbands with the number 1 on it. Skater 2 wears red armbands, that's on both arms, with number 2 on it. Skater 3 wears yellow armbands with number 3 on it. Skater 4 wears blue armbands with the number 4 on it. The referee may decide to use helmets or helmet covers to identify the skaters instead of armbands. So in the old rules, there was nothing stated about team pursuit. It was buried in an obscure ISU circular letter. It wasn't even a communication from who knows how many years ago. I didn't know about it. I found out about it from Bert Timmerman. And team sprint followed the armband rule for quartet starts. You get to single distance championships, and nobody'd know what to do. The organizers wouldn't know, and as a referee, I'd be scratching my head. Well, it doesn't say anything in the rules. So now here it is, all laid out, pretty clear and simple for us and organizers, skaters, and coaches. 256, results of races. Paragraph 6, results of mass start races. Paragraph C, points for intermediate sprints are now 3-2-1. The final sprint, or in the final sprint, the first 6 skaters now will be awarded points. Those points are 60, 40, 20, 10, 6, and 3. Paragraph C, Olympics, World Championships, European and Four Continents Championships, results of mass start races. If a mass start is skated with a semifinal and a final, skaters not qualified for the final, and skaters in the final will be ranked as follows. First on total points, second time at the finishing of the final sprint, three, number of laps skated. Ties are broken by the last intermediate time. And 4, a skater that qualified for the final but withdraws or is disqualified in the final will be ranked higher than all the skaters who did not skate the final. So this was never clearly listed anywhere except in a communication. With 256, results of races. Paragraph 6, results of mass start races. Paragraph D, World Junior Championships. We now have 2 intermediate sprints. They occur after the finish of laps 4 and 7. Points for the intermediate sprints are now 3-2-1. And points for this final sprint are 30, 20, 10, 4, 2, and 1. Skaters are ranked as follows: first total points, second time at the finishing line of the final sprint, and third number of laps skated, with the ties broken by the last intermediate sprint. Rule 268, winners. This rule has been reworded to reflect the new format for World Championships. The rule itself remains unchanged. Rule 273, official protocol, paragraph 1. The official protocol needs to contain the automatic or manual times, not both as previously required. And the distance analysis is only required when automatic timekeeping is used. Paragraph 3, digital protocol is now required for international competitions. It now must be filled out by the organizers immediately after the completion of the competition, but not later than 3 days. It used to be 6 months under the previous rule, and this just reflects our current technology. That's all. But you know, when you do have to sign the protocol, it's important to know what needs to be included there, especially in the case of world records. Technical competition equipment of competitors. That's letter I. The title of this section has been changed to differentiate from section G, sports equipment of competitors, that appears in the special regulations. Previously, both were just titled equipment of competitors. And the rule for each section, each of these sections remains unchanged. But just so you're aware of it, and you know where to look for the different equipment regulations. So this concludes my summary of the ISU rules and the rule changes. Does anybody have any questions about anything or any comments at this point? Okay, good. I'd like to thank you for your patience. It's been a pretty long haul through this, and it's gotten a little warm in the room. So at this point, you have earned yourselves a break. So there is coffee available in the back room where we had our reception last night, and we will resume at 10:20. So go enjoy yourselves for about 10 or 12 minutes, and we'll see you back shortly.